says, Shimmy says, Shimmy, Shimmy, Shimmy says, ask me almost anything.
Hey everyone, it's Shimmy, and it's time for another Shimmy Says. What are we going to talk about this week? Well, let me tell you what I want to talk about this week. You know, the title of this week's is Too Big to Fail, Too Small to Innovate. What I want to talk about is actually it's a lot of things that are going on, but they all point in one direction. Our government at the federal level and carrying through has made a decision that American big tech is too big to fail. American big tech needs to be shielded and protected as best we can. Now, this manifests itself in many ways. One of the ways, and I've spoken about it before, was the Intel bailout, right? Taking 10% stake in Intel, really for money they were already given under the CHIPS Act and they were going to get from the DOD. So it didn't cost us net new money. We took a 10% stake. Why, how it's going to work, it remains to be seen. I'm not a fan of government owning means of production. But clearly the government said Intel is too big to fail. We need to prop it up. Whether 10 billion is enough or not, I don't know. I've heard numbers that it needs 40 billion, but whatever. And I'm not against bailing out Intel and keeping Intel competitive. Excuse me. Other ways this is manifesting itself, though, too, is threatening tariffs against countries that are either taxing or making demands on American tech companies to change their way. Primarily the EU, telling Google, Apple, Meta, about their privacy concerns or policies they're doing that may violate privacy. Again, this is protecting these companies because we need to make sure that American mega tech, these hyperscalers, remain leading lights in the tech world because it's strategic to our country. That's not a bad thing, right? We want America to lead. We want the U.S. to be the power that it's been in the tech space. Another way we see this is tariffs, right? If you're going to make semiconductors in another country, we're going to charge 100% tariff on you bringing them into the U.S. And at first blush, that may sound good. You know what? It'll make our U.S. semiconductor industry better. I recently had the chance to see an old video from Ronald Reagan, I think in 1977 or something, where he addressed this. And look, I'm not a fan of the Gipper, to tell you the truth, but there were some things Reagan said and did that were dead on. And this is one of them. Another one is immigration. Right? He believed immigration's the lifeblood of this country. But what he said about tariffs then was that it gets bad quickly. It sounds good, but it goes bad quickly. And it goes bad quickly for the following reasons. First of all, it makes your domestic production weaker eventually because they're not competing on an even level with foreign producers, and so there's no incentive for them to out-innovate, outperform, out-manufacture, outsell these foreign companies because they have a built-in cushion, if you will, in this case 100%. Secondly, if you do that, then other countries are going to do the same thing to your products. And so very quickly you have a breakdown in the globalism or the global economic order, and you have what we're having now, which is this sort of IT sovereignty issue where everyone's just going to want to use hardware, software, data centers that are made in their country and stored in their country and used in their country. And in the long run, American business loses out on that because they're not able to sell to these other countries. So putting up tariffs to protect American countries, to protect American companies, is a red herring false flag. It's more important that American companies be able to dominate by outperforming, out-innovating the rest of the world. And that's what they've always done. That's what made those American companies great. That's what made Google and Microsoft and Apple and Meta. It wasn't because they were here behind protectionist walls. It was because on an even playing field, they out-innovated and outperformed other companies. That's what makes America, right? That's what made our companies great. Now, if other countries are price dumping, right, selling stuff for below cost just to get into our markets, or doing something else that kind of puts their fingers on the scale, I'm all against tariffing those particular countries and companies and products because they're not playing on a playing field. There has to be a level playing field for everyone. So hear me when I say that. But here's the bigger issue, and it's something that bothers me. For every intel we save, for every protection that we give Apple or Meta or Google or Amazon, AWS, are we in essence shutting the sunlight out from reaching the bottom of the forest, right? If Intel is not healthy enough, innovative enough, nimble enough to compete in the market, by propping them up, do you think they're going to get more nimble or more innovative? Or are we just kind of setting an artificial environment where they survive? Are we better off seeding the next generation of Intels, the next generation of innovation, the next generation of new technology that we can dominate in? And that's really my point here, right? Yes, some of these companies are too big to fail. We need them. We need them for America to be strategic. But we can't prop them up artificially at the expense of our next generation of great companies. Because mark my words, there's always a next generation of great companies, right? There was a Hewlett-Packard and a Cisco, and they give way to other companies. And Apple and Microsoft, OpenAI wasn't a company you knew 4 years ago. So we need to balance the too big to fail policies with remembering it's the market. It's all about the market, stupid, right? The market rules and market forces rule. And companies that are nimble, agile, and innovative succeed. Companies that don't fail. We can't prop up failures at the expense of thwarting our next generation of companies. Now, who is that next generation of companies? If I knew that, I wouldn't be doing Shimmy Says on Thursdays. I'd be sitting and watching my investments on that next gen. We don't know for sure, but I'll tell you they're out there, right? We hear about these AI is going to bring on one-person companies that'll do $1 billion or have $1 billion valuation. It may very well be. There could be people working in a garage right now that have the next breakthrough, the next Intel, the next Meta, the next Apple. If we don't give those new growth companies the sunlight to grow and reach to the sky because we're propping up failed businesses, we all lose. We lose as a country. We lose as individuals. The tech industry especially is built on fresh growth, on the next generation. That's why the VCs are so prevalent in it. That's the Silicon Valley success story. That's the American success story. We need to invest in innovation. We need to invest in the next generation. Right? At some level, the torch, as John Kennedy said, the torch gets passed to the next generation. And maybe that's time right now. Propping up last generation's companies because we think they're too big to fail at the expense of the next generation is not smart business. It's not great for America. It's not great for you and me. I hope you enjoyed this, Shimmy Says. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Shimmy says, shimmy says, shimmy, shimmy, shimmy says, ask me almost anything.